Okay, we're going to start with a single plane crash over Iraq, a really tragic loss of life. But what if I told you that this one event, what if it's actually a sign of something way bigger? Like a crack in the entire power structure of the Middle East. That's what we're going to get into. And this quote, man, it just hits you right in the gut. It really gets to the core of the human tragedy here. You have to imagine, for the families of this crew, this just came out of the absolute blue. Their loved ones were on a support mission, not a combat one. So they weren't expecting this kind of risk. It was a complete and utter shock.
And the immediate cost, it was just devastating. On March 12th, 6 U.S. airmen lost their lives. Their plane went down over western Iraq.
All right, so what was this mission exactly? And how in the world did it end so tragically? Well, the plane was a KC-135 Stratotanker. It's basically the workhorse of the Air Force. The best way to think about it is like a flying gas station, right? It fuels up fighters and bombers in midair so they can fly these super long missions. Now, what's really important to get here is that these are not combat jets. And that's exactly why losing one is such a huge deal. It's just not something that happens. So almost immediately after the crash, two completely different stories pop up about what happened. And I mean completely different. And that, right there, became the central mystery. What really happened to that KC-135? Was it just a terrible accident? Or was something else going on? And this slide just lays out the confusion perfectly. You've got two opposing narratives. On the one hand, U.S. Central Command comes out and says, nope, this was not due to hostile fire. But then, almost at the same time, an Iran-aligned militia group in Iraq claims we did it. We shot it down. It's a classic case of an information war, and it's all playing out in real time. So who are you supposed to believe, right? Well, when some expert analysts took a closer look, they found some, let's say, major holes in the malicious story. First off, the group offered zero proof. Zilch. But even more importantly, you have to look at the physics of it. KC-135s fly way, way up there. We're talking 20,000, 30,000 feet. The kinds of weapons these militias typically have, these shoulder-fired missiles, they can't even get close to that altitude. So the math just doesn't add up. Okay, so while that specific claim from the militia seems pretty unlikely, it doesn't mean the skies weren't dangerous. Not at all. See, the mystery of this one crash happened in a much, much bigger context. The whole environment was just filled with risks. To really get what's going on, we gotta zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And the answer to that is a hard no. This KC-135 crash was absolutely not an isolated incident. Things were getting more and more dangerous for U.S. forces all across the Middle East, both in the air and on the ground. And check this out. This is a really key piece of the puzzle. Around the same time, in a totally separate event, an Iranian strike actually hit a U.S. airbase in Saudi Arabia. And what did it hit? 5 other American refueling tankers right there on the ground. And the tension wasn't just a U.S. versus Iran thing, not by a long shot. You also had U.S. allies doing things that were creating massive risks. For instance, an Israeli strike happened inside Qatar. And remember, Qatar is another key American partner. So that just cranked up the heat even more. Honestly, it felt like the entire region was just a tinderbox waiting for a match. So you see, all these different attacks, this crash, they aren't just random, isolated events. They're all symptoms of a much bigger geopolitical earthquake. One that's literally reshaping the entire Middle East. And this quote, this really nails the core issue. Think about it. For decades, countries in the region have looked to the U.S. as their main security blanket. But then you see a major U.S. ally, Israel, striking another U.S. partner, Qatar. If you're one of those countries, you're going to start to seriously question that whole arrangement. You're going to ask yourself, hey, is this American security umbrella I've been paying for? Is it still working? And this is why it matters so much. Because as that old system starts to look shaky, these countries aren't just sitting around and waiting. No way. They are actively looking for new friends, building new alliances to protect themselves. They're hedging their bets. It means they're not putting all their eggs in the American basket anymore. They're spreading their risk around. So what does that look like in practice? Well, this slide breaks it down perfectly. You're basically seeing two rival groups forming. One is this sort of flexible tech and trade-focused partnership with the UAE, India, and Israel. And the other is a more traditional, almost NATO-like military alliance with Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey. The old unified structure is gone. The region is literally splitting into new camps. Okay, so what does this all mean for the future? What kind of Middle East is actually emerging from all this chaos? Well, the short answer is a much more dangerous and unpredictable one. The old days of a single US-led system, they're over. We're now in what experts are calling competitive fragmentation. It's a fancy way of saying you have all these new groups competing for power, and the risk that some small incident could blow up into a huge war is probably higher than it's been in a long, long time. And all of this brings us right back to where we started, with that tragic KC-135 crash. It leaves us with one last big question to think about. In this new world of shifting alliances, what's actually the greater threat? Is it the missile you see coming from a known enemy? Or is it the failure of a friend you thought had your back? That is the really unsettling question in this new era.